Thanks, Sarah. This is BBC Radio 4. It's 5:30 on Sunday, the 23rd of March. Good morning. This is News Briefing with Jane Steele. The civil service will be told to save more than £2 billion a year ahead of the Chancellor's spring statement. Violent clashes in Turkey between police and protesters have continued for a fourth night following the arrest of Istanbul's mayor. And in sport, the Wales football team have made a winning start in their campaign to qualify for the World Cup. The civil service is to be told it must make savings of more than £2 billion a year without hitting frontline services. It's understood the Cabinet Office Minister Pat McFadden will tell government departments to reduce their running costs by 15% by 2030. Whitehall sources have told the BBC the changes are part of the government's spending review. Here's our political correspondent Damien Grammaticus.
It is expected to be 10% in 4 years' time in their running costs, 15% a year later, about £2 billion. Could fall on procurement, could fall on through things like technology. The unions are warning that this figure, perhaps £2 billion, amounts to about 10% of the staffing.
The Chief Prosecutor's Office in Istanbul has asked the Turkish authorities to formally arrest the city's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, on terrorism and corruption charges. He's already in detention and has called the accusations immoral and baseless. Thousands of his supporters have continued demonstrating across much of the country. Mr İmamoğlu is due to be formally named as the presidential candidate for the main opposition party, the CHP. Ministers are expecting the initial findings of an investigation into the fire at a substation that closed Heathrow Airport within 6 weeks. The inquiry was commissioned by the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband alongside the regulator Ofgem. Mr Miliband says the government is determined to fully understand what happened. Our correspondent Tom Simons has more.
It's going to look at why a fire took down a key substation on the national grid that feeds Heathrow, why so much power was lost that Heathrow had to shut for so long, and I think crucially why it took so long to get the system back up and running, so effectively switching from the one substation that was out of action to the two remaining ones that feed Heathrow.
A top Hamas figure has been killed by an Israeli airstrike in southern Gaza. A Hamas official said Salah al-Badawil was killed with his wife in Khan Yunis. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says Israeli attacks have killed 32 Palestinians in 24 hours. Houthi media in Yemen have accused the US of attacking the airport in the port city of Hodeidah. They called the strikes an act of American aggression. Washington has vowed to continue attacking the group in its efforts to stop Houthi attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. The Pope is to leave hospital in Rome later today and return to the Vatican. He was admitted to the Gemelli Hospital with breathing problems 5 weeks ago. Doctors treated him for pneumonia in both lungs. The Vatican says the Pope will deliver a blessing and wave at well-wishers outside the hospital. The hospital's chief surgeon, Sergio Alfieri, says the pontiff will not be rushing back to regular duties.
The Holy Father will be discharged in a stable clinical condition with a prescription to partially continue drug therapy and a convalescence and rest period at least 2 months.
Blue Peter, the world's longest-running children's TV show, will no longer be broadcast live. The BBC says the decision to pre-record the show reflects changing viewing habits. The former presenter Janet Ellis said future hosts would never know the threat of things going wrong. Now Sarah Keith-Lucas is back with today's weather.
Thank you, Jane. Well, we've got quite a murky start to the day. Quite a lot of low cloud, drizzle, showery rain, but there will be some brighter spells developing a little bit later on and the chance of a few isolated thunderstorms too. So we'll start with the detail across all of southern England, South Wales, through the Midlands and eastern England. It's going to be quite a grey morning. We've got an easterly breeze developing, and that's bringing some mist and fog from the North Sea around coasts and hills, especially towards the south and the east. The cloud will tend to break up, though, a little bit as we head through the day. Some sunny spells, especially southwest England, South Wales too, but there'll also be some isolated thunderstorms. They will be really hit and miss, but if you do catch one, you'll certainly know about it, especially across southeast England. Temperatures around 14 to 16, touch cooler than recent days. For North Wales, Northern England and Scotland, quite a wet start. We've got rain around for many areas. It will ease, though, through the day, but things stay fairly cloudy, fairly damp. Best of any brightness will be to the west of high ground, certainly western Scotland, parts of northwest England, seeing a bit of sunshine here and there. Temperatures for most 10 to 14, but only 8 or 9 close to the east coast, with that cool breeze coming in, and it's also quite misty around that east coast too. Northern Ireland, though, seeing a largely dry day today. Here, cloudy start, some sunshine developing, especially towards the west, and top temperatures around 11 degrees. Overnight tonight, any showery rain eases away. A chillier night in store, especially towards the north. Little mist and fog around overnight too, but we're looking at a drier and a brighter day for most into tomorrow.
Sarah Keith-Lucas, thank you. And now for a look at the Sunday papers. Reeves takes axe to civil service is the headline in the Sunday Telegraph on the Chancellor's plans to save £2 billion a year. It reports that the Cabinet Office Minister Pat McFadden will send out a letter to all government departments saying the cuts must target roles in HR, office management and communications to spare frontline services. Unions tell the paper it raises the prospect of tens of thousands of redundancies. All UK families will be worse off by 2030, according to a report in The Observer. The analysis from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation says poorer families will bear the brunt of the fall in living standards. The paper describes the economic analysis as grim and says the data raises serious questions about Sir Keir Starmer's pledge to make working people better off. A Treasury spokesman tells the paper that real wages are rising at the highest level for 6 months and that getting more money in people's pockets is the number one mission. A Sunday Times investigation says it's found evidence of huge fraud taking place within the student loan system. It says people with absolutely no academic intent are enrolling on degree courses and are then accessing loans with no intention of paying back the funds. The paper says officials fear there has been organised recruitment, particularly of Romanian students. Writing in the paper, the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson calls the potential fraud a hammer blow to the integrity of higher education in this country and has ordered an investigation. The Mail on Sunday leads with an accusation that Scotland Yard pulled armed officers away from Downing Street in 2020 because they feared Black Lives Matter protesters might grab their guns. The paper says police chiefs are facing claims arising from court papers that they put the security of Number 10 in jeopardy while Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. The Mail adds it's the first time the Metropolitan Police has admitted that armed officers were moved from Downing Street during a riot. The Met wouldn't discuss specific matters, but tells the paper it would be completely wrong to suggest the security of Downing Street was compromised. The Sunday Mirror front page is a plea from Neville Lawrence to one of his son's killers to name the rest of the gang that murdered Stephen in a racist attack in 1993. The paper says Mr Lawrence was speaking from his home in Jamaica after David Norris admitted being involved in the killing in a Parole Office report. And the Scottish Mail on Sunday reports that only a handful of drug addicts who have used the SNP's controversial drugs shooting gallery have been referred for recovery treatment. Critics have accused the party of breaking its promises to tackle addiction when setting up the £2.3 million facility in Glasgow, which allows users to take controlled drugs without fear of prosecution. Scottish Government statistics show there have been 27 referrals since it opened in January. A spokesman said they expected the use of addiction recovery services to grow as the facility became more established, and added the service had already saved lives. In sport, Wales have made a winning start to World Cup qualifying campaign. With the details and a roundup of the rest of the action, here's Paul Serres.
Wales got their World Cup qualifying campaign underway with a 3-1 win over Kazakhstan at the Cardiff City Stadium. Rabbi Matondo came off the bench to seal the win with his first international goal, to the delight of his manager, Craig Bellamy.
Oh, it was his first? I didn't know. I've known Rabbi since he was very young. It's been so good having him with the group. He's such a character, he's so funny. The players love him, we love him as staff. You can't help but love him, and that's everyone. So to watch him, you felt everyone was happy. So not just me, but the whole group were happy.
Arsenal closed the gap on Chelsea at the top of the Women's Super League to 5 points with a 4-0 win over Liverpool. Elsewhere, Everton were 3-0 winners over Crystal Palace, who remain bottom of the table. There were victories for France and Scotland in the opening round of Women's Six Nations fixtures. Scotland held off a late charge from Wales to win 24-21 in Edinburgh, while Ireland lost 27-15 to France in Belfast. In the Rugby Premiership, Harlequins fought back from 12-0 down at half-time to beat Saracens 23-12 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. In the day's other game, Bristol Bears thrashed Exeter Chiefs 52-38 at Ashton Gate. In Rugby League, Leeds edged past the champions Wigan 12-10 to claim a statement victory. And the British number one Jack Draper is out of the Miami Open, beaten in straight sets by the Czech player Jakub Menšík.
Paul Serres there. Finally, a glance back at some of the stories that were making news on this date in earlier years. A year ago, the Princess of Wales revealed that she was being treated for cancer. Catherine stepped back from royal duties when she had abdominal surgery in January that year. She said it had been an incredibly tough couple of months for her and her family, but she was getting stronger every day. In 2017, 5 people were murdered and 50 were injured in a terrorist attack in Westminster. One of those killed was PC Keith Palmer, who was stabbed outside the Houses of Parliament. The attacker was shot dead by police. Richard Tice witnessed the aftermath as he came out of Westminster Underground Station.
I looked across to the west pavement and there were bodies, people lying on the bridge, being tended to. Looked further down the south side of the bridge, it was clear that actually there were also people lying on the floor on the western pavement. And when I spoke to someone, they said that a car had mounted the pavement, or a vehicle, and literally driven the whole way from south to north up the bridge, knocking people over.
In 2016, 32 people died, along with 3 suicide bombers, in attacks on the main airport and metro station in Brussels. More than 300 others were injured. The remains of King Richard III were taken to Leicester Cathedral in 2015, 4 days ahead of reburial. The bones of the last Plantagenet monarch, who died in the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485, were discovered under a car park in 2012. In 1963, the Secretary of State for War, John Profumo, told the House of Commons there was no impropriety whatsoever in his relationship with the call girl, Christine Keeler. He resigned in June, admitting that he had lied to the House. Also on this day in 1963, the Beatles released their first album, Please Please Me. The Lumiere brothers staged the first public showing of a motion picture using film projection in Paris in 1895. And in 1888, a director at Aston Villa, William McGregor, wrote to his own football club and others, suggesting the creation of a league competition. This resulted in the establishment of the English Football League, the oldest in the world. And there we end the last ever news briefing, and indeed the last shift of Leon Robbins, who's been producing radio at the BBC for more than 3 decades. From tomorrow morning, Radio 4 will have a new look between 5 and 6 a.m, with news, the return of Yesterday in Parliament, the shipping forecast, prayer for the day and Farming Today. We look forward to having your company then.